المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, in our discussion about Nahjul Balagha, keeping in line with the changing themes of the khutbahs of Nahjul Balagha, for today I have selected two khutbahs. One is a little bit longer, one is shorter, but they basically deal with the common theme of wealth and poverty at different level in human society. The first one is khutbah number 23. Inshallah, I'll send this to those of you who are on our email list. This is an important khutbah where Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the advice or the outlook that the rich people, the affluent people who have been blessed with wealth, as well as what should be the attitude of the people who are comparatively deprived. And how do we look at the situation? He talks about the concept of, refraining from what is known as jealousy, especially among those who are linked to one another by family relationship. And so the very beginning part of this khutbah is the part where Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the concept that you have to realize أما بعد فإن الأمر ينزل من السماء إلى الأرض كقطر المطر إلى كل نفس بما قسم لها من زيادة ونقصان. The translation would be that you should know that verily the divine orders descend from the heaven to the earth like the drops of rain, bringing to everyone what is destined for him, whether plenty or with plentifulness or with little. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen is talking about here, he's using the example of the blessings of Allah, the wealth that Allah gives to us, just like the raindrops. And the rain, when it comes, it doesn't come in uniform form all over the world. In some areas, it pours. In some areas, it's just, a little bit, dripping, and that's all. And so, Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that remember that blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also comes in the same form. Sometimes, or in some places, and sometimes it will really pour, and in some places it will be there, but just, few drops. And so when we look at this concept, Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that remember that eventual source of sustenance is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum. And since, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in various ayat of Quran also, that when you talk about rizq, He has mentioned that this is in my hand. يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He is the one who gives to whomever He wants, بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, without any measure. He is also someone who also restrains and, gives a little bit, or sometimes He even restrains His rizq from people. There is one ayat where Allah says, when I give, they are very happy. They say, Allah has honored me. But when I restrain it, Rabbi Ahanan, Allah has disgraced me, insulted me. So that's, and so Allah says, sometimes I give and sometimes I take it back, or make it less, or more. And so this is what Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying, that the sustenance comes like the raindrops. Sometimes in some places it is plentiful, sometimes it is little. And so when you see, and that's where then Ali comes to the point, فَإِذَا رَأَى أَحَدُكُمْ لِأَخِيهِ غَفِيرَةً مِنْ أَهْلِ أَوْ مَالٍ أَوْ نَفْسٍ فَلَا تَكُونَنَّ لَهُ فِتْنَةً Amir al-Mu'min says, whenever you look at somebody, whether a relative, brother in a family line, or on the religious basis, if you see somebody who has been given plentiful, whether it's wealth, or progeny or children, if that person has been blessed, that blessing of Allah on that individual should not become a fitna for you. It shouldn't become a matter of anxiety, and because that's where jealousy starts. You have to realize that it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think when we look at this concept of jealousy and hasad, this is one of the fundamental evils in a human character. And the way it has been condemned in Islam, there are so many ayat and ahadith talking about it. Even the last surah, the last two surahs, which are known as, in a way, ta'aweez, seeking protection with Allah. One of them is from the hasid, from the person who would act according to his jealousy. And I think one of the powerful ayats which can really cure a person who really believes in Allah, as far as hasad is concerned, is in Surah number 4, ayat 54, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Are they being jealous of the people because of what Allah has given out of His grace? It means a person who is being jealous that why he got this is actually not the protest is not against that individual. The protest is against the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A jealous person is actually not targeting that person only. He is actually protesting the decision of Allah. And this is where we have been told that we have to be very careful about it, because jealousy is not only between two human beings. It is the jealous person is actually protesting against the decision of Allah. And that's where we have to think about it. Who are us? Who am I to make that question that why should Allah give to this person more than me? It is Allah's decision, and therefore that's where you come to realize that hasad really should not be there. If we know Allah is Malikul Mulk, He is the one who is the Raziq and He is the sustainer. Now, on this issue, hasad is on different levels of society. This ayat that I mentioned, the earlier part of it is very general. أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. There are people being jealous of others because of what Allah has given to them out of His grace. But this is, if you see, it comes on different levels. We look at the family life. You look at brothers and sisters, uncles, and this is where things increase, and then that's where you see the problems. People really get out of their own resources, put themselves into debt in order to fulfill the greed, in order to maintain the same lifestyle which somebody else, a brother, a sister, an uncle, a cousin has been given. Well, you have to look at your own situation and, don't let that influence you. Even between husband and wife. And I didn't know this until I came to the western part of the world, and when I look at this women's movement, this whole fight between men and women, even there, Quran has this ayat in Surah An-Nisa, ayat 32, where Allah says regarding the shares that Allah has given to male versus female inheritance and other rights and obligations which are there. Allah says, وَلَا تَتَمَنُّوا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Do not have this desire, because it's not just a desire, it's actually a desire with grudge, that why he has and I don't have, or why she has and I don't have it. Do not desire what Allah has given to one over the other. And then Allah says, وَلِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَا. The men have a share of whatever good deeds that they earn, and even the women have the share the main issue should be of what will happen on the day of Qiyamah. On the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to look at the good deeds of men and women equally. But what He has blessed us in this dunya, the men get, let's say the sons get double of the share of the daughters. There should be no jealousy there and competition between the sons and the daughters, because Islam is looking at the level of responsibility. And the burden of responsibility is more there on the sons, and therefore the share in inheritance has been given more to them compared to the daughters. As a general rule, there are many, flexible ways of handling such abnormal situations. But this ayat again is talking about this concept of jealousy on that level also. Even on the issue of imamat and khilafat, hasad comes in. Actually, if you look at this ayat which I recited earlier, from Surah An-Nisa, ayat number 54, the continuation of that is about the fadl, the grace that Allah has given to Ali Ibrahim. And we see even in the khutbahs of Amir al-Mu'minin, he says, people have been jealous. They know that we have been blessed with imamat, but people out of their own greed and jealousy, he uses the issue of hasad as one of the elements which urged others to basically deprive Ali of his rightful khilafat and position after Rasulullah. And so when we talk about jealousy, sometimes we think it's just a very simple, minor akhlaqi issue, but it has implications on different levels in human society. And so Amir al-Mu'minin says, so if any one of you observes for his brother plenty of progeny or wealth or self, it should not be a worry for him. And then continuing on this theme, Amir al-Mu'minin says, the main issue is the character of the person, the honesty and amanat, as we call it, of the person. So long as a Muslim does not commit such an act, that if it is disclosed, he has to bend his eyes or close his eyes in shame, and by which low people are emboldened, to criticize him or do something like him. He is like the gambler who expects that the first draw of his arrow would secure him gain and also cover up the previous loss. Let me go on to the second part, where then Amir al-Mu'minin applies this situation. He says, similarly, the Muslim who is free from dishonesty expects two good things. Means if a person is good, Allah will bless that individual. You don't have to look at what Allah has blessed others with and feel jealous and have hasad. If a person is free from dishonesty, then two things would happen. Either Allah will call him, means he will die, and in that case, what Allah has for him is better for him in the akhirah. So either the blessings would be there in the hereafter, or it could be that Ali says, livelihood of Allah in this dunya, where the person would have children and property with his iman and respect intact. And so Allah can bless, the people who are free from dishonesty in akhirah or in this dunya. That should be issue. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever you want, irrespective of what Allah has given to others. And then in this khutbah, he goes on to talk about a couple of other things regarding the issue of taqwa. He says, أحذر من الله ما حذركم من نفسه. Beware of Allah against what He has cautioned you and He told you to be afraid on certain issues. He's going to question you. And do not give Him an excuse on the day of Qiyamah to punish you. An important thing is that an act without riyā, without showing off, and with the intention which should be very sincere. For if a man acts for someone else, then Allah makes him or hands him over to someone else. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I'm not going to reward you. If you've done it for somebody else, go to that person. If you're done for another cause, don't come to me for reward of that. So sincerity is really an important issue that Amir al-Mu'mineen is mentioning on this issue, that, be free from dishonesty, have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and keep your intention, sincere. Then he ends this passage of the khutbah with a dua, which is really something we don't really think about. We talk about blessings of this dunya, jannat in the akhirah, but this is a dua, nas'alullah manazil al-shuhada wa mu'ayishatul su'ada wa murafiqatul anbiya. That we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the position of the shuhada and the company of the su'ada and the friendship of the anbiya. This should be the ultimate dua of a mu'min. Now just think about these three groups. Shuhada are the martyrs who have given their life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Su'ada are those who have been blessed with Allah, with sa'adat. They are fortunate ones. And anbiya, of course, they are at the top. And the dua here is not only the issue of going into Jannah. Remember, in Jannah also there are different degrees. Especially when couples think that inshallah we'll be there together, you have to make sure you're on the same level then. And this is what you have to work for. There are so many different levels and degrees. And here we are saying that it's not an issue of being in Jannah, rather being there in the position of that the shuhada have, and in the company of the people who will be the fortunate ones, and the friendship of the Anbiya and Mursaleen. Actually, there is an ayat on this issue, again going to Surah An-Nisa, ayat 69. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Man yut'illaha wa rasul. Whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. These people who obey Allah and Rasul, they will be with those who have been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah Al-Fatiha, what do we do? صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. That, oh Allah, keep us on the path of those whom you have blessed. Who are these people who have been blessed? This is where we see in this dua that Allah says that those who believe, who obey Allah and Rasul, they will be with those who have been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, min al-nabiyyin, from the prophets, was-siddiqeen, those who are truly, perfectly true, means their character, their belief, their deeds, everything is true, was-shuhada, and the martyrs, was-salihin, and the righteous people. Ulaika hasuna ulaika rafiqa. This is the best of friendship. So we had to really, move ourselves to a higher level of thinking that friendship with Anbiya, with Siddiqeen, with Shuhada, and with Salihin. That is also a level that we really have to think about, work for it, and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. The second part of this khutbah is where Amir al-Mu'mineen is now talking about the first part basically was addressed more to those who have been relatively deprived. Means they have not been given that much as others. And so Ali is saying, be careful, don't be jealous of those who have been blessed. Now we are coming to the second part where now Amir al-Mu'mineen is talking about those who have been blessed. What is their responsibility and their duty? And there he is really connecting this issue of mal and wealth with the issue of charity and closeness with the aqraba, those who are related to us. Although the theme and the message is not only for the relatives, how do we behave with them, it's across the board, but the emphasis here is more about what is known as Silatul Rahim. Amir al-Mu'mineen begins by saying that if you have to compare the importance of kinship with wealth, relationship within the family compared to wealth, Ali is saying that relationship is more important than wealth. His words are, O people, surely no one, even though that person may be a rich person, can do without his relatives. Their support by hands or tongue, physical support, or we are talking about good word about an individual from those who are related to him. These are very important issues. They are his most important support from the back, from the front, and they are the one who defend him during the time of trouble, and they are the most kind to him when tribulations befall this individual. So Amir al-Mu'minin is saying, when you look at the relationship, Silatul Rahim is emphasized in the Quran, and here also is saying this is more important than the issue of wealth itself. The second point, he talks about the akhlaq of an individual. If you really have to leave something behind after your death, is it good memories of you in the minds of the people, or is it the money that you are leaving behind? And this is where Ali is saying, the money will go, people, would not even appreciate that. What they will remember more, and, which will be more lasting, is good memory of a person, the way he dealt with others. And so Amir al-Mu'minin says the good memory of a man that Allah retains among people is better than the property which others inherit from him. So it's the akhlaq. Akhlaq is the best of inheritance and legacy that a person can leave behind. The third point that Amir al-Mu'minin has here is that, now that you are the blessed one, you have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as compared to the poor person, then you should be there to help them. Behold, if any one of you finds your near ones in want or starvation, he should not desist from helping him, because what you are going to help is not going to decrease. By giving the money that you are giving to the person, you might think it's decreasing, but in your account in the akhirah it's increasing. And if you hold on back to yourself, don't think it's going to increase. It might increase, give some eggs in the bank, but it's not going to last much. It's going to be more fruitful if you really give in the process of charity, especially to those who are related to you. Number 4, now Amir al-Mu'minin is saying, if you withhold your help from your kinsmen and the relatives, Ali is saying it's your one hand that you are holding back in helping others. Remember, there are 10 other hands on the other side. If you behave with them that way, those 10 other multiple hands of your relatives that you have, when you need, that also will be held back. And so you have to look at your own interest also, that it's good to help them. Inshallah, when you need their help, they will be there for you. And finally, going back to this second item, and the fifth point, Amir al-Mu'minin here says, again, the kind, temperament of a person, the behavior and attitude is the one which will retain your law among your people. And so that is the main thing. And here we see a mixture of silatul rahim with mal that Allah has given to you, as well as emphasis on the behavior and the akhlaq which should be there when we deal with our family members. Continuing on the same theme of wealth and poverty on a different level, I would now go to khutbah number 130. It's the same theme, but from a very different perspective. And this is actually a khutbah which was, it's actually not even a speech, a khutbah. It's actually a conversation that Amir al-Mu'minin Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salam had with, this is the conversation that Ali had with Abu Zar Ghafari. at the time when Abu Zar Ghafari was been exiled by the third Khalifa Uthman. And in order to understand this khutbah, we have to know the background. Why was he exiled? But before that, let us look at who is Abu Zar al-Ghafari himself. His name basically is Jundam bin Junada, and he is from Al-Ghifar tribe, which was close to Medina. And one of the distinctions that he has is that he's among the earliest Muslims, maybe fifth or sixth, who accepted the message of Rasulullah. He was also very well known for his righteousness and for his zuhud and taqwa. He was not a slave of this dunya. And I think it's to his credit that the Prophet has basically described him in a very unique way. He has not used these kinds of words for others. And we are talking about Sahaba here. The measure and the standard of Ahlul Bayt and the Sahaba are different. We are talking about Sahaba here. Among the Sahaba, I don't think there is any description of this type from Rasulullah about his companion, where he says that the sky has not covered and the land has not carried anyone more truthful than Abu Dhar. And so among the Muslims, when we talk about the Sahaba, there is no one more truthful than Abu Zar al-Ghafari. And this becomes very important later on in his life. He was also a strong supporter of Amir al-Mu'mineen during the days of the Prophet and even after the passing away of the Prophet. The second issue we have to see before we go to the khutbah itself is, why was Abu Zar exiled? A very prominent Sahabi of the Prophet. I don't think there is any Muslim who can actually question the importance of Abu Zar al-Ghafari. The issue is that he could not tolerate the materialism which went into the administration of Uthman, and especially his nepotism, more reflected in the administration of Muawiyah, who was the governor in Syria. Because Abu Zar, during this time of the second Khalifa, had moved from Medina to Syria. And he had a lot of problems as far as Muawiyah and his lifestyle, the way he conducted himself as a governor of a Muslim nation. There's a lot of problems that he had. And I think just to get the background on this, if you remember last year in our session on Nahjul Balagha, we went through the third khutbah, known as khutbah Shiqshaqiyya, where Amir al-Mu'mineen had reviewed the three past administrations. And if you look at the words he has about the third Khalifa, he talks about the Shura, what happened. At the end he says, with him, referring to Uthman bin Affan, he says, with him, the children of his grandfather, referring to Banu Umayyah. He says, with Uthman, the children of his grandfather also stood up, swallowing up Allah's wealth like a camel devouring the foliage of spring, till his robe broke down. His actions finished him and his gluttony brought him down. And so Amir al-Mu'mineen basically, was very, very critical about the nepotism, especially in the third Khilafat, where Banu Umayyah basically had considered Baytul Mal to be personal property. You see, this is also the same time where you have, the Muslim Empire had expanded. The Arabs had conquered Syria, which includes Palestine, as well as Egypt, and then Iraq and Iran. And now, the revenue, the tax revenue really had gone up. And so the Muslim government was very rich at that time. But instead of this richness and this wealth being, going down to the level of the masses, it was being, monopolized by the family of Banu Umayyah. especially during the time of the third Khalifa. And this is where we see Abu Dharr Ghafari had a lot of problems. He could not be silent when he saw this injustice going on by the rulers of the time. And so he was very critical of Muawiyah when he was in Syria. Because of his criticism, Muawiyah sent the letter to the Khalifa. He said, you know, I have a problem with this guy here. You better call him back to Medina. So he was recalled. In a very brutal manner, he was brought from Syria to Medina. But in Medina also, Abu Dharr Ghafari didn't change his tactique or his style. He was still continuing Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar. Even though the rulers didn't like it at all. One of the verses that he used to recite, and this is the interesting part, nobody, no Muslim, Khalifa or no Khalifa, can ever stop a Muslim from reciting ayat of Quran. Of course, they will always question him, why do you recite this in front of me? Or, you know, you read it at my face. Maybe he was giving it's not an issue of maybe, he was giving a message. And this is the ayat from Surah At-Tawbah, ayat number 34 and 35, which he used to recite loudly. He says, those who hoard up gold and silver and spent it not in Allah's way, announce to them a painful chastisement. On the day when it shall be heated, the gold and silver will be heated in the fire of Jahannam, and then that gold and silver would be used to brand their forehead, their sides, their backs, and they will be told, this is what you hoarded up for yourself, therefore now test what you are hoarding in the dunya. And so this was a warning that Abu Dharr used to recite quite a lot, to let them, the officials of the government, know that what you are doing is absolutely against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not only that, he actually used to even, in Medina especially, now that he's back from Syria into Medina, he even used to recite this hadith. Said the Prophet said, when Banu Umayyah will become 30 in number, means those who will become powerful figures in a Muslim government, when their number reaches to 30, they will regard the cities of Allah as their property, His creatures as their slaves, and His religion as a tool of their own treachery, as a way of basically enriching themselves. And when when Usman was told about it by Banu Umayyah, that Abu Dharr Ghafari goes around reciting this hadith of Rasulullah about us, and so Usman called him. And he said, how can you say that? Do you have a witness? And nobody was daring to come and stand up there and say that, yes, we have heard the Prophet saying it. Finally, Abu Dharr said, why don't you ask Ali? He is the closest to the Prophet. And so Ali was called, and Ali basically said, yes, what Abu Dharr is saying is true. And that's the time when he was questioned, how can you verify this hadith? Amir al-Mu'minin said that, remember the hadith of Rasulullah? That the sky has never, sheltered, and the land has never carried somebody who was more truthful in his speech than Abu Dharr. So if Abu Dharr is saying this, that this is what Rasulullah said, this other hadith of Rasulullah is a verification that whatever he's saying is the truth. And so he basically got in trouble because of this. To the extent that Usman's administration finally decided to get rid of him. And they ordered Abu Dharr that, you will be exiled. He was told to go to a place called Rabza, which is far away from Medina, a desert area where there was no many people there. Not only that, he was told that, you have to leave the city and go into exile. Announcement was made that no one in Medina is allowed to go and talk with Abu Dharr, see if they can help him, or even to do Khuda Hafizi, to say bye-bye to Abu Dharr. And at that time we see that most of the Muslims in Medina, out of fear or whatever, abided by their instruction of the Khalifa, except Amir al-Mu'mineen, who went with his two sons, Hassan and Hussein, and with his nephew and son-in-law, Abdullah bin Ja'far, and his brother Aqil, as well as Ammar bin Yasir. All of them went there basically to bid farewell to Abu Zar when he was leaving Medina. And at that time, Marwan, the son-in-law of Osman, as well as the secretary of the Khilafat at that time, he came with his horse, riding on the horse, and he told Ali that, don't you know that the Khalifa has forbade anyone to go and talk to Abu Zar? And that's where Amir al-Mu'minin basically took out his own cane or whatever he had, and he hit Marwan's horse and said, get away from here, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. And at that time we see Amir al-Mu'mineen uttered those words, which has now become khutbah number 130 of Nahjul Balagha. But before we go to that, and there is a lesson in there for us. How do we conduct ourselves in this part of the world? Abu Zar went to Rabza, and soon, started suffering from all perspective. Eventually, he died. His son died. He died, leaving a daughter. And a caravan was coming from Iraq to Medina, and they saw this girl, and she said that my father has just died. When they asked the name, they were told that the father of this girl is Abu Zar al-Ghafari. And this was a qafila coming from Iraq, and the people in their qafila were Malik and Ashtar, Hujr bin Adi, Sa'asa bin Sawhan, and Aswad and others, about 14 of them. So they got down, they knew the name of Abu Dhar, probably they had even met him. So they were the one who basically did the ghusl and kafan and burial of Abu Dhar, all alone in that desert area in exile by a Muslim ruler. This is the unfortunate part of the Muslim history. Going back to this khutbah, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to Abu Zar that whatever you have done is actually, there's nothing wrong about it. O Abu Zar, you showed anger in the name of Allah, therefore have hope in Him for whom you became angry. Ya Abu Zar, innaka ghadabta lillah, farju min man ghadabta lahu. Your anger was not for your personal issues. And this is the important thing here. That when we talk about this concept of ghazab and rida, our anger and our devotion both should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you are angry with somebody because, that person is, let's say, violating the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that would be appropriate. And so the first thing we see that is Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that, oh Abu Zar, whatever you had done, you're not done anything wrong because you were angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing, إِنَّ الْقَوْمَ خَافُوكَ عَلَى دُنْيَاهُمْ. The people were afraid of you because of their world, because of the wealth. They were so much into materialism that they knew when you talk to them, they will have to give up their greed. Whereas you were actually afraid of them for their religion. You didn't want to basically, when it came to the issue of deen, you did not want to, let your religion go away from you by being silent and be part of the process. And therefore you spoke out and you spoke for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen says, فَمَا أَحْوَجُهُمْ إِلَى مَا مَنَعْتُهُمْ وَأَغْنَاكَ عَمَّا مَنَعُوكَ. They were more in need, the people. They were more in need of what you were saying to them. But you didn't really need anything from them. So if there was a need here, it was there who needed you. And very soon, you will shortly know who is the rabih ghadan, who is the main person who will gain in this process, whether you or them. And you will see that, you will be the one who will be successful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if these skies and earth were closed to some individual and who feared Allah, then Allah will open the doors for him. So don't worry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you. You don't have to worry about what the dunya is doing to you. Only rightfulness should attract you, while wrongfulness should detract you. If you had accepted their worldly attraction, they would have loved you. They even tried to bribe him and he refused. So he's saying, if you had accepted their worldly attraction, they would have loved you. And if you had shared in it, then they would have given you asylum, you would have been with them. But then you would not have been with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, when we look at this example, we have to keep in mind that, one of the signs of the Shias is that, a true follower of Ali is somebody, if the opportunity is right and the chances are there, when it comes to Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi al Munkar, especially on that level, where officials are involved, it takes courage to really speak out. And what we see in the example of Abu Zar al-Ghafari is the example of a true Shia who would not compromise on the principles of Allah, Rasul and the Quran for the sake of dunya. So when we talk about, mal dunya and the greed that we see all around, we had to realize a Shia might have to, in this time and age also, accept a life where we might not get what everybody else has around us. This whole issue of jealousy, competition. If you really we want to live a true life, we have to accept the reality that we cannot be like others. Because we have to follow the path of Allah, Rasul, as taught to us by the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat alayhi. Let me read to you, something he used to say, Abu Zar, to the people about Amir al-Mu'mineen, because this was just one part where he was exiled, that he used to criticize their lifestyle, their greed and materialism. But on the other side, he was also there whenever he got the chance to talk about Ali. One of the quotations that we have from him, and this is not only in Shia sources, it's there also in Tariq Yaqubi and others, where he says, Ali bin Abi Talib is the wasi, the successor of the Prophet and the heir of his knowledge. O the confused ummah after the death of its Prophet. This is how he is addressing the Muslims. You are confused after the death of the Prophet. If you had preferred the one who was preferred by Allah and rejected the one who was rejected by Allah, and if you had accepted the leadership and successorship of the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet, then you would have benefited from the heaven above your heads and the earth under your feet. And the wali of Allah would not deviate, nor would he change anything from the duties imposed by Allah. And no two persons would have disagreed on the divine judgments, because you will certainly find its knowledge with them from the book of Allah and the sunnah of His Prophet. And now that you have done what you have done, you have to bear the evil consequences of your own actions. One of the contributions of Abu Zar is that when he was, during the time of the second Khalifa till the Khilafat of Usman, when he was in the area known as Sham or Syria, he also used to not only criticize Muawiyah and his lifestyle, but he also used to talk about Ali. What do you see now in that region? You see this presence of Shias in Lebanon, which was actually part of Sham at that time, till the first war. actually the seed of that Shia presence in that region is because of the hard work of Abu Zar al-Ghafari, rahmatullah alayhi. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us the tawfiq to be among the true followers of Allah, Rasul, and be among the true example of those who were the Shias of Ali bin Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. His death took place in the month of Zulhijjah in the year 32 after the Hijrah. So he is one of those whose example for us is very important. Ammar bin Yasir, and his case in Siffin, with the statement of Rasulullah about him, which we quoted last week, and Abu Zar al-Ghafari with this hadith about him from the Prophet, that he is the most truthful person on this earth among the Muslims. With his action, when you put all this together, this itself becomes a way of looking at the conflict that we saw during the early days among Muslims. Because these are some of the Sahaba whose character, whose background, and the Prophet's testimony about their character is beyond any challenge or any dispute. And their behavior at that time, and what were their affiliation vis-a-vis Ahlul Bayt and the rulers of the time, becomes a very important indication of where the haqq and the truth lies. Any question on what we have talked today? Can we be like Abu Dhar? When we talk about this issue of following the Ahlul Bayt, I think it's easier to say we have to follow the companions of the Ahlul Bayt. To say to follow the Ahlul Bayt is really unreachable goal. I think we should be talking about following the ashab of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. And if we can become like them, that will be probably the biggest of achievement that we have. Especially when we talk about Salman Farsi, Abu Zar, Ammar, Miqdad, and others. Interestingly, many of them became shuhada. When you look at Ammar, Miqdad, and others also. Or even Qambar. The way Ibn Sayyid, one of the poets of the Abbasid era, who lived during the time of Mutawakkil, because of his Arabic, expertise in Arabic language, and he was a poet of top level. Mutawakkil had assigned him as a tutor for his two sons. And Mutawakkil, he had this, highest level of hatred towards the Ahlul Bayt, especially towards Ali. And so one day he saw that Ibn Sayyid and Mutawakkil's sons were there. He happened to pass by, and so he asked him, probably knowing the inclination of Ibn Sayyid that he is inclined towards Ahlul Bayt. He said, what is your opinion about my two sons? Are they better, or Hassan and Hussein, the sons of Ali? And that's where we see, Ibn Sayyid then, and there are times where you say there is no more room for time for taqiyya. And that's where he couldn't take it. And he says, you're talking about your sons, comparing them with Hassan and Hussein. They are not even equal to Qambar, who was the slave of Ali. Qambar was more, better than them and you. And that is where Ibn Sayyid was then killed. He basically lost his life because of that statement. But it was something which he couldn't really accept coming from Mutawakkil. And so when we talk about being the followers of Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, we realize, to say that as a name it's very easy. But when time comes to live up to that is something different. And that's where I'm saying that the issue of us following the example of the companions of Ahlul Bayt is really very important. Especially when we look at the khutbah we discussed last week, where Ali is calling them, Aina ikhwani, where are my brothers? So it's not only that where are my Shias, where are my brothers? He's elevating their status when he talks about Ammar and others. And so, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to learn these examples from the Sahaba of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, and be among the true followers of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Well, jealousy is part of human nature. We cannot deny that. I think it's the issue of how a person handles it. Especially if a person starts acting out the jealousy. That's where the problem starts. It begins with, harming ourselves. If I, out of jealousy, would like to reach to that level through unlawful means, then I'm putting myself into trouble in the eyes of Allah. Then a higher level of acting out jealousy would be to do something to harm that other person, whether it is by destroying the reputation or doing something even worse. So I don't think that jealousy can be eliminated. It's part of human nature. It's the issue of controlling it and not really acting it out. Because we see in the very early history of humanity, when we look at the example of Habil and Qabil, it was jealousy. The first murder of human history is based on that. And so that's where we have to be just careful of it. Let's conclude with the dua. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.